Hi everyone, and welcome to those who've just joined us. Thank you for joining our games, animation and graphics session. This session is going to be presented by Ben and Katie, who are two of our tutors in the media department. Throughout the session, again, please feel free to use the Q&A box to the right of your screen and ask as many questions as you have, and we'll do our best to answer them at the end of the session. Now I'll pass you over to Ben. Hi, Ben. Ooh, Ben, you're on mute.
Hi everybody, thank you for coming. This is going to be a couch college session about creative media, but mainly focusing on games, animation, digital design and communication. But we will be able to answer questions on the wider media, and we are going to go over all of the media provision at Manchester College, not just games as well. So if you've got any questions about related subjects or something that you don't think has been covered, by all means, we'll happily answer those questions as well. My name is Ben Elson. I teach mainly games development at the Manchester College, but also 3D design, 3D art and visual effects. And I also work at USM Manchester on the 3D degree there as well. My main specialism is games development. It's something that is a lifelong passion, lifelong hobby as well. And I think the best thing about what we do is it's something we love and we enjoy, and we get to see new people pick it up and learn. And I think my aim for today would be to make sure you've got a really good understanding of what it is we do and then what it is you would like to do in the future. I'll just pass you over to Katie.
Hi, my name's Katie Rushton and I teach with Ben at Openshaw campus. My specialism is animation, and I also teach on our digital design course as well. So my background is in animation, and that's what I studied at university. And I also work a lot with our employers as well, the companies we work with, mainly Flow Creative, an animation studio in the centre of Manchester, and Creative Cow, a digital agency based in the Sharp project, and they help help us design and create our courses and our assignments, and I work very closely with them. I'm going to pass you back to Ben now, who's going to tell you a little bit more about our overall media courses.
That's great, thank you. So yeah, like I said, we're going to go over creative media generally, and then Kate and I are going to do some demonstrations and give some more sort of specialist and focused demonstrations and information based upon the main things we teach. But I think it's really important that anyone moving into a very modern form of media understands the entirety of the media, and there's loads of overlap and there's loads of opportunities to mix and match, and try and arm yourself with as much information as possible. And if you've got any questions about what something is or where it fits in or how you become that, then that would be really nice to hear at the end as well. So we've got a series of courses that we run across all levels. This year we've got a brand new course, and I think we wanted to start with this because it is totally new and it's really original in what it's doing, and it's called digital content creation, which is something that I'm sure everybody's really used to because we use this stuff all the time. And this course is about designing, creating, developing marketing campaigns, promotions, social media content in association with Pi Analysis, who are a pretty major marketing and content development company based upon Manchester. And they're really excited to get to work with our students because our students understand, they know and love this world, and they've got a really good sense of what it means to use something on a mobile device, or to be quickly uploading things to Instagram, to shop while you're walking down the street. The course will cover a real broad range of things, everything from more traditional sort of photography or filming work into much more kind of modern and contemporary, maybe some visual effects work, maybe some motion graphic work which gets overlaid on this content before it gets uploaded. There'll be script writing, there's going to be some development of music videos, and it's really for people who want that output. They want to be able to develop that output fast and make things look really modern, really unique, and then move on to the next project as well afterwards, because that is the world that we're now living in there. So that's really exciting, and we're really grateful for Pi Analysis to coming on board with us and working with us on it. And we really want an excited, engaged group of people now to come and work with on that course. We've then got broadcast film and television, which initially sounds like a slightly more traditional media course, and in some ways it is, but I think when we live in the world of Netflix now, we've got to really understand how much content is needed for the world of broadcasting, the world of filmmaking, TV series, and it is no longer just 3 channels on the screen. We've got to fill thousands of hours of download and watch time now. So this course is really for people who are focused on making films, documentary or fictional, want to get into documentary and journalism. They're going to be covering podcast creation, which is something that I listen to an awful lot, and I think it's one of the best and probably the most underused forms of media as well. And then also some print media, because print media and journalism is still a really live, vibrant industry. It just happens to be you click and watch it on screen rather than go to the local shop and buy a newspaper. So if you've got an interest in broadcasting, film and television, you want to play with studio cameras, you want to work with multi-camera setups or single camera setups, maybe you want to sort of walk around the streets documenting your life with your phone, this is what that course is all about. Then we move on to my world. And a little smile appears on my face, and this is games development. And this one is normally seen as pretty straightforward for people who want to learn how to develop, make computer games. And the only thing I would say is that people don't understand how many different skills, different projects, different personalities we really need in games. You could be a modeler, you could be an animation person, you could be really into texture, you could want to work in 2D, you might want to specialize in 3D. We have a lot of really talented concept artists as well, people who can maybe do some drawing and we bring that into a digital sense using Photoshop or something similar. The big thing we do as well is Unreal Engine 4, which is probably the most well-used game engine in the world now. We're very lucky that we get to use it in our studios, and something I'm going to show you today will be walking you through the process of loading into Unreal Engine 4. And then you've got the development of the ideas, the storytelling, the narrative, designing characters. We did a lot of work this year on representation in characters and discussing what we think a game should be in terms of the wider social values as well. And then to finish off, we do some compositing and VFX, which is everything from blowing some things up to fire effects to having velociraptors running around in classrooms. It's really exciting, really different, and all you've got to do is really want to make computer games. We then move on to motion design animation, which is where Katie will be talking to you about shortly, and I'm sure she'll give a far better account of what this is than I am, but essentially we want to make stuff move. For whatever reason, for advertising, for entertainment, my little boy loves Peppa Pig, someone has to make Peppa Pig. Okay, and that's what this course is there to do, is for people who want to get things going from one side of the screen to the next. We're very lucky again with this that we work with Flow. Flow are a Manchester animation and motion design studio. They do some incredibly creative work, everything from large scale projects to small little icons dancing around on the internet, and it's a really developing area. And I think we are one of the few motion design animation specialisms in this area as well, across the UK. So that's a really exciting course if you want to design, but then you want to see it move straight afterwards. Then we move on to digital design and communication. This is what would have once been called graphic design, but now it's a whole lot of something else as well. This brings a little bit of what I was talking about with the pie analysis content course into it, with some more sense of probably you're an illustrator or a designer, or you've got a love for typography, you want to get into branding, you love logos, maybe even website design as well. In this course, we work with another specialist agency called Creative Cow, and they are a marketing company who help us understand what the modern designer needs to know and do, and then we bring that into a studio and into a classroom, and we work with them on there. So if you like your vector illustrations, you like to do layouts, maybe you love making logos in Illustrator, or you like to sit and sketch characters, this would be a really ideal course for you. The final course that just is slightly different to the rest. This one is based on our Northern campus as it is right now, and this one combines little bits of the other areas into one. So it's got some TV and film production for fiction and for documentary, and then specializes more in kind of the compositing visual effects side afterwards, which tends to come from the games course traditionally. This course is really broad ranging, and it focuses a lot more on getting an outcome at the end, so working to a brief, working to an instruction, and then solving little problems, designing, creating, making stuff move in 3D, in 2D. And what we try and do with this is for people who maybe aren't totally sure about the pathway they want to go on to, but they know the subject, they know the sort of software, they know the sort of things that they'd like to make. And then our job with you is to find a place for you to go on and to do that from there. We're very lucky at the Manchester College. We have got a very large number of people we have worked with, and some of the logos on the screen you will instantly recognise, and we've worked with these people either on projects that come in to work with us, some projects quite small, some we've worked with over a very extended period of time, and it's really exciting from my point of view, because the industry is so fast paced. It turns around so fast. They do such amazing stuff. And for me, as a teacher or a lecturer in this, is I want to be a part of that as well. So these are my opportunities to keep myself sort of involved in lots of projects. From your point of view, what it means is the work you do with us is directly relevant for the workplace. So everything we teach you is guided towards getting you so you can walk into a studio, whether that be a graphic design studio or a film studio, and start to work on day one. And that's our goal. And the more people we work with when we're doing that, the better your chance of that happening. Okay. Okay, I'm now going to pass you over to Katie, who's going to show you some examples of work that we've produced with a short show reel. Is that okay, Katie?
Yep. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen so you can see the work that I'm going to show you. Hopefully that's coming up on the screen now. So this is available on our YouTube channel, so you can access this show reel again via the link that's going to be posted in the chat. This is going to show you a variety of work from our games design, animation and digital design students. So basically the stuff that me and Ben teach at Openshaw. So there's a nice mixture of things that you can see here. So I'll just set that going. Okay, so I'm going to pass you back to Ben now, who's going to give you a short demonstration in Unreal Engine and 3D software to show you the kind of thing that we do on the games course.
Okay, thank you, Katie. Yeah, let me just set my screen out here. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of work with you on a games art pipeline or a pathway, and rather than going over one thing within the world of games, what I wanted to show was maybe 2 or 3 pieces of software and how they link together and how they work together. And I think some people think games is really hard, really technical. Maybe you've got to be really good at coding, and in fact it's really not about that. And I thought the best way for me to sort of maybe see your way into this was to show you some piece of work that's been produced and then see it in game and explain a few things to you along the way. So the first thing I want to look at is a bit of 3D modeling, which is something that a lot of our students really do fall in love with and spend a lot of time, and many have gone on now to really exciting careers, either in games, film, visual effects, working as a 3D artist. What I've just put together on screen is quite a simple 3D model. It's nothing particularly fancy. It's a sort of semi-traditional looking game asset, and you can go and find these things online and see examples of the work and see what people do and see different styles. None of this is hidden away, and also what is really good about this is we use Autodesk 3ds Max, which is still the largest used piece of software industrially, but you can get it for free as long as you sign up as a student, and you can go and get it now. And if you want, I can give you a link and you can even start and follow tutorials online, follow some of our tutorials. start your first steps as a 3D modeler, and the more you do, the better you become. It's all about solving problems and experience. So this well is a series of pieces. That's all it is, attached together to look like one object. And the brilliant thing about games is none of this exists. None of it's real. You make it real by your ideas, your designs. And the first thing you do when you're looking for an object or looking to make an asset or design a character, go and look at real things first. And whilst the well might not look like this sort of well, it's about studying and seeing shape and seeing form and sizes. The well is just made up of some basic bits. So we've got some stones that are arranged. We'll make one of those in a moment. The roof tiles are just sort of roughly assembled together to overlap. There's a basic wooden frame which has been made a bit quirky and a bit wonky, and then there's sort of wooden slats on top, and it all comes together to make something that looks like this from here. And at this stage, 3D art doesn't really look that good because we have to then go on and render it, but this is almost the pencil and paper for us. This is where the real hard work comes into it, and then the more you understand about lighting and about rendering and what different software does and how different software looks, the better you'll get at game art. So the first thing I just want to pick out, I just chose one of these bricks. It's quite a simple object, and we'll just quickly make one now. This is basically a wonky box, a wonky cube. So let's just make a wonky boxy cube like so. So you just take a box from here, I'll put a segment in the middle, and then what I now do is I convert this. Now, if you're in my classroom, I will show you all of this in extreme detail, but in this platform, all I really want you to do is see what's at work, see what's on the go, and to realize this is not that hard. And you keep clicking buttons and you keep making loads of mistakes and you keep learning from those mistakes, and eventually you end up as a pretty decent 3D artist. So I need to take all these little edges, and there's a little knocked off edge on the side just to sort of make it look a little bit more natural and not just like a hard box. In fact, I'm just going to do some stuff to make this a bit quicker for me. You don't have to sit and watch me click around. I've missed that. Okay. And then I'm going to put on this little chamfer option here. That looks like a little capsule. It's far too big. So I'm just going to bring that down a little bit just to make that kind of boxy shape. And that's sort of about right. And then I'm going to pick out these little dots, which are called vertices. So one of these is the vertex, and I can click on any of these vertex and then maneuver them around to position them as I want them to be. Now, the ones over here is gone like something like that, and then they've just brought them in together like so. And what we did when making this is we made, I think it's 40 individual little bricks. So it does take a bit of patience and it takes a bit of time, but then you assemble it, bring it all together, and you end up with something that looks a little bit more like you've been and found it rather than you've made it on a computer. And as we go through all these processes, we move all these little things around, and we invent something from nothing. We end up bringing it all together. And if I just change this onto a slightly higher quality viewport and put shadows on, it starts to then look a little bit more like the assets that you might see in a sort of a fairly simple game on the Switch or something. Okay, and that's 3D modeling, and that was the quickest demonstration of 3D modeling I'm ever going to give. There's millions of options and things, but right now I just want you to see very simple little box. That fella moved some stuff around, kind of looked like a brick, brought it together. I hope we got it well. Okay, so then what we're going to do now is we're going to go and texture this, and this is the most exciting thing in modern games development for my book. So I'm going to jump onto a piece of software called Substance Painter. And I've already done this because I wanted you to see the end result, but I wanted you to see what was possible. Now, Substance is, well, it's kind of changed the way we texture game objects, and it's given us so many opportunities to do real or cartoony, different types of materials that get overlap. So we've made the model, and now we're putting a kind of covering on a material on top. And I've chosen to do this through very, very simple, plain, flat colours to fit this sort of very low poly, cartoonized style. And each individual object has been given a different material. Now, we can do this in lots of different ways. The way that I've done this is just put on a very simple color. And for those of you who've got a working knowledge of Photoshop, or maybe something using maybe GIMP, something like that, some graphic design software will know that layers and fill layers and painting on layers is really normal. And that's what we do in Substance. So that means if someone comes to me and they've got an interest in Photoshop, they've also got the ability to make game materials. And I'm talking professional, high-end game materials. Just to demonstrate just a few things about this. So if I just look at one of the roof tiles, this one's got a base red on. It's really easy just to put on a different colour, or I could even go really bold and drag on one of the pre-made materials, which is like a gold in this case. And I don't think that works very well, doesn't fit my style at all. What is really good about this is we can change the texture of things based upon a slider. So there's no coding, there's no programming, but I can make my roof tile look more or less metallic simply by a slider. Okay, I can change the base color with a click of a button, and then we can even go and add on more details and paint details on afterwards if we want to. I'm not going to go into that with you right now because it's really boring watching me do that, but it's about creation and design and development. And you'll see at the bottom of the screen, this is called the shelf, and in here are materials that I've either made or I've downloaded from an open source sharing platform called Substance Share. And there's everything from realistic metals to decals, there's leathers, there's carpets, there's plastics. And some people quite like the feel of texture in games, the way games look, the way games sort of feel like they should look. And we've all seen a really bad texture in games and criticised it. And I say to my students, well, you're the next generation now that are going to make these improvements as we go through into the next generation of modern games. And again, Substance Painter is, if you are a student, free to download. You get a free 3-year license, and there's nothing to stop you right now going downloading this. You can go and get some free 3D asset, start painting away, and then send it on to me and impress me. And I encourage people to do that, even if it's making things that don't look that good. Get used to the process and you'll get better and better and better at it. Okay, so we've got a model, we've got materials, and the last piece of the jigsaw really is to see this now inside of a game engine. So I've kind of cheated a little bit, and I've just put together a really simple sort of landscape, and I've tried to come up with a kind of narrative. It's a well's got water. So on this island, we'll be stranded, and then I'll just place the well into here. And I wanted you to see now how modern games are constructed. And I'm going to do a couple of things just to sort of give you a sense of how little coding is actually now done in games development, to the point where I'm going to do 0 coding in this. And it's all going to be done using the interfaces. So if you're not really into the idea of being on the keyboard all the time, we still want you in the games world. The games world still wants people who are artists and technicians and animators to develop these games, these visuals, these environments that we're now creating. So I've already imported the well to my software, and then I bring it in, and it's absolutely tiny, which is totally normal. So I'm just going to scale that well up. I'll do it the proper way. Okay, I'll make it about 3 times bigger. In fact, even that's still really, really, really small. Let's go bigger. And then position it somewhere in here so that it kind of looks like it belongs in this environment. And now I'll play the game, and the well's really tiny. It's much smaller than I thought. But there it is. There's the well inside the editor. I will scale that up so it doesn't look so silly, like a borrower's made it. That's better. Go bold then. Okay. And there's my well in the hillside. And there we are. That's a game asset. You'll notice that I can't run through it because it's got something called collisions on. So we're already thinking about physics as well in the real world. And the textures are on and the colours are on. And you can imagine if I'd have gone for more realistic wood, more realistic stone, more realistic canopy on the top, and matched it with a more realistic set of trees rather than those sort of fake, faceted, sort of brown polygon ones, then we start to build up a real world. There's just a couple of things I wanted to show you before I pass you over. And that is the first one, I want to add some sound in. Games involves an awful lot of sound development. Sound is really important. The way things hear and the way things look have to work together. And sometimes the people we work with are more focused on sound than they are on the visuals. There's a few ways of doing this. I'm just going to throw it on what's called a blueprint, which is our version of coding or scripting. And you can see instantly I'm not got a white screen with black flashing text and having to type in anything in C# or Python. And this is really smart. So this is basically saying event begin place. So when we play the game, we want something to happen. I'm going to type in play sound. So I'm literally talking to my computer and telling it, I want you to do this. Play the sound, select the asset, and then somewhere down here, there's an atmospheric water. So that's it. That's how I get background audio in a game. I click, 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 go and find it. No coding. Thanks very much. Play the game. The sound. I hope it's coming through. You hear that, Katie? You can't hear the sound. There might be. I thought there might be an issue streaming it. There is. There's a lovely babbling brook sound in the background. Really straightforward. And then one last thing just to throw in, because everyone wants to know how to do this. I'll just bring in a couple of these objects. I'm going to turn physics on. Create a view. And this is the first thing everyone asks me when I start demonstrating. Before we do anything else about textures, materials, they say about physics. So I've literally dragged in this very simple object. Click simulate physics. Click play. You can see now that the ball down. Put on the game. That one's stuck. There we go. So that's now the first little starting point of gameplay. And one of the things I do with a student early when they're working in something like this is I challenge them to make levels, make ideas, make puzzles, and start, even if it's silly little things like knock all the balls off the shelf or something, start to think about the story and the interaction in the user. And that's the really brilliant part of games, is it brings everything together, from the art, the interaction, the design, the sound, and the storytelling into one place. Okay, so I hope that's given some insight into games. There's a lot of different skills go into it. The one thing I didn't cover was animation, and that would probably be the next thing, maybe get a gate to open. But I think that's a really sort of fair introduction now into the world of making things for computer games. And it's all stuff actually you could go and do right now with this software. Okay, right. I'm going to now pass you over to Katie, and she's going to take you through some animation skills.
Katie, you're on mute.
Sorry, I'm going to be using a graphics tablet to draw directly into the computer. So these, you will get access to this equipment if you come and study on any of our media courses, to be honest. We use them in pretty much in games, in animation, in digital art, graphic design, everything. And so this allows you to draw straight into the computer. So you can use sort of hand-drawn artistic skills, but they automatically become digital as soon as you start using one of these tablets. So I'm just going to share my screen. And this will give you a little bit of an idea of the sort of thing you can create using the skills that I'm going to talk about with you today. So this little chap here, this little stick figure, has been rotoscoped. Rotoscoping is an animation technique where you can trace a piece of video. So you're borrowing the movement from a piece of video. So your movement is really smooth. It's often quite realistic. But what you draw over the top can be anything. In this case, a stick figure that doesn't resemble a real person. But the movement has been borrowed from a real person. So I've taken the video from the Blinding Lights challenge from TikTok. So I'm just going to show you what a finished product could look like, and then I'm going to take you through a very short introduction of how you could create something similar to this. So I'll just press play. Okay, so that's sort of the finished product. I'm going to get you to sort of this stage, just show you how we'd get one little short sequence created in Photoshop. So just get me Photoshop open. So this is what a sort of finished product would look like. You can see I'm playing it using the timeline feature, which allows you to animate directly into Photoshop. And we're going to be using frame by frame animation at 12 frames a second, which means I need to do 12 individual drawings for 1 second of animation. So it's quite time consuming. It's probably one of the more traditional animation methods, like think about sort of old Disney was done in frame by frame animation, hand drawn. So it's sort of harking back to that kind of early animation, but it's still used a lot in industry today because it allows you to really control the movement. So the first thing I need to do is bring my video into Photoshop. So I'm just going to import that footage. And I've got my file located on my computer here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to limit it to every 2 frames, which sort of reduces my frame rate and means I only have to do 12 drawings for every second instead of 24, which obviously halves the workload, but still keeps the movement nice and smooth. So you can see I've got 11 frames here, and that corresponds to my 11 layers that I have here. So as Ben said, most of the software we use, Photoshop, Illustrator, Substance, etc., all involve layering up graphics and images to build things, and so that working with layers is something you'll get very familiar with. And the first thing I need to do is I need to create my character's head. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer on top of the video layer, and I like to be nice and organized, so I'm going to label it 1B because it's the second layer one. And on that layer I'm going to draw a circle shape using my selection tool. I'm going to stroke that to create the circle that I wanted to create his head. So about 20 pixels should do for that. Okay, you can see it creates this little head shape. And then instead of redrawing that circle 11 times, I'm simply going to duplicate that layer and reposition it on the following frame. So I'm just going to drag it down onto here and rename it 2B. You can see where I'm going with this. And on the second layer, a second frame, you can see when I move from one frame to the other, you can see the movement. So the character in the video's head moves upwards. So in order to track that movement, I need to move my circle upwards as well to allow it to follow the movement in the video. So I'm just going to nudge it up, try and frame his face in the same position each time. And then when I'm happy with that, I'm going to do the same thing again, duplicate that layer, rename it 3B. And then move on to my third frame, drag it above the third layer, and again, oops, you can see that I need to move up again between those two frames. So I'm just going to nudge it up and try and frame his face in the same position. I've drawn that circle slightly bigger than on the demo version, but it gives the same effect. So I basically continue to do that until I'd done all 11 of my frames, and he had a circle head on all 11 frames. And what you do when you're working with the timeline features, you don't delete any of these layers, you simply make them visible or invisible using these little eyes. So on frame 1, I would only want frame 1 and 1B to be visible, so I need to hide those. On frame 2, I would only want frame 2 and 2B to be visible, and then the same on frame 3, 3 and 3B. So you can go back and organise these frames at the end once you've finished drawing them all. And then once I'm happy with the position of his head, I can go back in and draw his body. Got a stray frame there, we go, turn off that one. So this is where my graphics tablet comes in, because it allows me to draw straight into the software freehand. So I'm going to use my paintbrush tool to do that. If you're used to using any digital drawing software, they all have a paintbrush tool. I'm going to set my colour to white, which is already ready. And then this can be a little bit tricky when you're rotoscoping, because sometimes the frames, you can see the video's a little bit blurry. So you do have to guesstimate a little bit sometimes to make sure that you are tracing the movement. But what you have to remember with frame by frame animation is each image is only on the screen for 1/12 of a second. So as long as it's in the right place and it's part of the sequence, it will still work and still give you that nice movement. So I'm just going to draw sort of a spine, his back in there, and then draw in the arm movement. Obviously, I'll do this a lot slower and more carefully when I'm not demoing this to you. You want to maybe focus on where the joints would be. So focus on the fact there's a shoulder, an elbow, so it gives you that kind of arm shape. And then move on to frame number 2, layer number 2, turn off the layers I don't want, and do the same thing again to make him follow the movement. You see that arm's lifted up ever so slightly as part of the sequence. That one's come forward slightly. This leg is pretty much in the same position. That one has lifted up ever so slightly as he's taken his foot off the ground. And then when I've finished tracing all of these layers, I can go back and add some effects to them to make it have a sort of neon glow. So to do that, I select the layer that I want, go onto my effects menu and find outer glow. And you can see it's put a nice kind of neon blue glow on there. So I can play around with the settings on that, make it a little bit stronger, make it a little bit bigger or smaller, might take it back a little bit, make the blue a slightly brighter blue, slightly more vibrant. And it gives me this glow effect. So I can add an outer glow. And the other thing I can do to make the actual character look like his neon tubes is add an inner glow as well. So I'm just going to go back to my effects option and add an inner glow. choose the colour that I want, so a similar blue colour. Change the settings on that and play around with the settings to get that a little bit more. There we go. See that slightly inner glow, and it gives it that sort of neon tube effect with the white in the middle and makes it look like it's glowing. So you could then copy that effect by right clicking your layer once you're happy with it, copy layer style, and on the second frame you can paste that layer style straight onto my other layer, so then that layer becomes blue and glowy as well. And you can do that with all your layers in one go, so you don't have to reapply the effect every single time. Then when you finish your character, you can find a background similar to this one, very 80s, and add that in as a layer underneath. What I did for the final one was I made a video that I made that in Adobe Premiere, so I edited it together with the music, each individual clip, animated the sunrise in the background as well, just to build the whole scene together and make sure it's synced up with the music. So essentially that's how you do rotoscoping. I'm just going to take you back to the website that I made. So this website, there should be a link in the chat hopefully to this. This has got some information about rotoscoping. So it's been part of the animation world for a very long time. If you're interested in finding a bit more about where it started as a piece of technology, as a technique, you can have a look at the presentation here. But I've just got an example as well to show you of some student rotoscoping that we made for Manchester Animation Festival. So I'll just play that for you before we head back over to Ben for the summary.
They wonder what you got, makes my wife think you so hot. And I wonder what you got, you rascal, you.
Okay, so you can see that you can pretty much draw any character you want as a rotoscope, and the movement allows it to be really beautiful and fluid, and the character over the top can be literally anything. Hopefully you recognise a few characters there from various games and animations, as well as some original designs. So this is a project we do in the very first term, in the very first year, so it's often students' first experience of animation, and it's a really good fun one to start out with when you're studying the course. So I'm going to pass you back to Ben now. And he can just do a little summary of everything we've discussed today, and we'll move on to some questions at the end.
Oh, Ben, you're on mute, sorry.
Okay, so thank you, Katie. Yeah, and just a quick observation really on what Katie's just shown in that video is the idea of imagination and being creative and what that really means. And I think one of the best things that you get to learn really is to see a challenge and then come up with an answer in your way. And it was really lovely to see the application of a skill, but done with someone's personality and someone's identity within that work. So that was really, really nice. I'd say that when you want to work in media production of any kind, whether you want to work in content creation or games or animation or illustration or making newspapers, is you've got to be able to do two things. The first thing is be able to come up with an idea and then come up with a creative way of seeing that put into life. Or you've got to take someone else's stimulus, somebody else's idea, somebody else's brief or instruction, and then show them a really sort of imaginative way in which that can be done. And I think whatever form of media you might be looking at, if you've got that kind of bug to make things and to design things and to see your work be put onto a screen, then this really is the industry for you, and hopefully will give you a slightly better sense now of what particular specialism you might now like to go into. So that's been really it's been really great from my point of view to be able to talk to you about that as well. Okay.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, guys. That was brilliant. I wanted to do the course myself. So we've had loads and loads of questions which have come in during the session. So somebody's asked, what career paths do these courses lead to? Don't know who wants to take that.
I'll take that.
Go on then.
I'll take that. I think the courses are guiding you towards. I'm really bright on my own screen. It's really upsetting. The sun's come up. The courses are guiding you towards industries, and what's also really important though is they don't force you into that role. And many brilliant animators go off and do work in marketing or in advertising. People who study games might work in television and film. But I think what's really important to understand really is what the industry wants and what the job role wants. And the best thing I would say to go and do is to look at jobs that are being listed. I would also say that there's some really informative websites out there which can give you the information on about those sort of careers. There's jobs that are very kind of hands-on in terms of the making, the production, and that's what you've seen probably with us, loading software, bringing things to life. But there's also loads of jobs around ideas and around promotion. I've had a lot of game students who've gone and worked on sort of marketing and live demonstration works as well for summer jobs. Aside from then the business side of it as well. And I think when you look at maybe like the course we're doing with Pi Analysis, is this most successful people will have a good understanding of making and ideas and developing ideas, but also a sense of what the business wants and what the audience wants as well. So there are seemingly unlimited types of jobs, but it's the type of subject, the type of skills you want to put into practice. And just one thing to say as well is most people will change that job many times throughout their career. It won't be you are stuck for 40 something years as an animator. You will probably find loads of different opportunities, and I think that's why people do like to work in this industry, is that there's so many different ways of applying this that you can't get bored.
That's brilliant.
Okay? I'll pass you back.
Thank you. So somebody has said, what, this course looks really cool, can I still apply?
I'll answer that one. Yes, you can still apply. We take applications through the summer, and then you sort of finally decide which pathway or course you're going to be on at enrolment in August. So we even sometimes have students who've come in to interview for animation, for example, and then over the summer or as they've been finishing off their GCSEs, they've actually decided that they fit the games pathway more. So you're not actually enrolled on the course and sort of finally put your name in the hat for that particular course until enrolment. So there is time to sort of find out over the summer what you like to do. And often we say to students, work on your portfolio over the summer. Don't just stop drawing because your GCSE art's finished. Keep creating things. Find out what you like to do, what you like to make. And then when you come in August and we show you the different options, you'll have a really good idea about what's the right fit for you. Because as Ben said, you can go on to work in lots of different industries from our courses, but you kind of need to decide when you're studying at college for 2 years, what's going to be the most fun option that fits your personality and your skills as well.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Because then there's quite a few people that have asked sort of what, you know, career paths can they choose and what can they go on to doing after sort of studying this course. Somebody has asked about what sort of software are you using? I know you guys obviously did your demonstrations and things like that, and we've put those in the links. Yeah, somebody just said, what software are you using?
Go on, Katie. I think we should both answer that one.
And then pass to you, because it does vary across the pathways. All the courses use the Adobe Creative Suite, so that's your Photoshop, Illustrator. On the animation course, we make most things move in After Effects as well, which works very well with Adobe and Illustrator because it's part of the same suite, and Adobe Premiere and Adobe Animate to do character animation. So those are the key ones we use within the animation and digital design courses. It's pretty much the Adobe suite, because they all talk to each other. It's industry standard. It's what you'd be expected to know when you're applying for jobs and be able to talk about it in interview and things like that. But Ben has an extra level of software that he uses, which he'll be able to tell you more about if you pass it to him.
Yeah, games visual effects is the one where the software probably is most discussed across the industries. If you've got the remote slightest interest in games production at all, you'll have heard of Blender and Maya and Modo, 3ds Max, and there's loads of arguments over which is the best one. My line really is whatever one you've got, just try and do something really great with it, because every different studio, every different project demands different things. And in fact, a lot of the really big, exciting companies tend to learn things as they're going through, particularly when it comes to something like compositing or visual effects. This is really, really new. And one thing I want my students to have is a really open mind about solving problems, about not worrying about the software we're using as such to go on and use. What's really important for me is that we're getting software that is of an industry level, that is used in industry, because that sets your aspirations and your expectations for yourself when using it. And a lot of these things, they're not just toys. They need really amazing people to make amazing things. That doesn't make them themselves. So it's also as much about the person sat with the software. And there's actually some really brilliant free open source stuff. If you haven't got access to 3ds Max, which is what I was modeling on, then Blender's really good. Some people prefer Unity over Unreal Engine. I personally prefer Unreal because my students get to do more things within it. The content creation course is probably going to be the interesting one, where it doesn't matter, if you make something that looks fantastic and the client goes wow, it doesn't matter whether it's been made on something that's really expensive on an expensive computer, whether it's an app on your phone. Most work I do on Instagram and Twitter, I don't use my PC for it, I use my phone, and there's Adobe have got apps, there's some really cool stuff now, and it really is about being inventive with what you've got, rather than worrying about have I got the right things to do the job.
Brilliant, thank you. That actually leads me on to another question. Actually, somebody said that my son signed up for September, but nervous that they can't afford computers and software at home. Is there any support?
Yeah, I mean, there is this year we've got a big question mark because of what's happened with COVID in the last few months. I would say, under any circumstance, though, we do totally understand that. We're very lucky with the computers that we've got to pick out the game studio. We are running the latest graphic cards that can do everything that the most next gen can do, and I don't expect my students to have that at home. I do. It's part of my job. I've chosen over a period of years that I like to invest in that for myself, but for my new students, we will make sure that your access is as effective as possible, and that when you're with us, in the time with us, you're using that, and then maybe doing some other sort of more research or more design stuff away. We are currently discussing options about what the sort of COVID situation is for next year. This is all totally led by government advice, and what I will say is whatever the outcome for that is, we'll make sure that we make the very most of your time with that software to get the very best out of you, whatever that means. Students, if they go into university or they go freelance, that's when I would recommend that you start worrying about software. And I certainly wouldn't expect anyone coming into further education to feel the need to go out and buy an expensive computer at all.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Ben. Katie, did you want to say anything on that?
It's a very similar situation. We find that we try and maximise the time in the classroom, so we will definitely be doing the practical work when you have access to the facilities in college, and then we ask our students to spend as much time outside of the classroom doing their research, putting their blogs together, writing their evaluation and their diaries on their websites, so that when they're in class they're spending as much of that time in Photoshop or Substance or whatever software they're using. With our timetable, I think I've seen a question in the chat asking how many hours you're in. So we are a full-time course, but you're in taught lessons 2.5 days a week. So you would be expected to do a lot of your sort of non-practical work and finishing off projects and things outside of the classroom as well. We sort of say, ideally same again outside of class if you can do. We know students have other commitments, but to get the most out of our courses you need to put in the hours, and if you can focus on the practical work when you've got access to the college equipment in the classroom, by doing more of the sort of non-practical work at home, it really does help us out, because you're not sat, typing something up on a high-end expensive computer when you could be using the software, because you've done all your typing up at home, and that really does help us out. And that's what we see our most successful students invest in these courses as a big chunk of their week. It's not just something they do for a couple of days and forget about in between their lessons. They really want to study these subjects, and they see themselves as an animator or as a games designer from the minute they walk through the door.
Fab, thank you for that, guys. There's a couple of questions about sort of higher education. So there's a question about, is there a clear progression to USM Manchester, and also do they have to go to university after the course?
With the 3 courses we've discussed today that we teach at Openshaw, there is a direct course with our higher education partner USEN. So there's a motion design, an animation motion graphics HN course, which tops up to a full degree if you want to study for that length of time. We have got a graphic design course as well, which our students from our digital design pathway often progress onto, and the same with the games course as well. We've got a 3D modelling and animation course for games, and I teach on the animation course at USEN, and Ben teaches on the games course at USEN. So it's really nice that we are able to take our students through that whole journey into higher education with us. Having said that, you don't have to go to university after studying with us. Still, the majority of our students do. The industry does still often require graduates for entry-level positions. That is changing, and there are more apprenticeships and other opportunities coming up in particular things like content creation, digital marketing, stuff like that our students have the skills for. So you don't have to go to university, and we spend a good chunk of time in the second year of our programme where we do a specialist progression unit that allows students to really explore what their options are and helps them put their portfolio together. We go through the UCAS and university application process, but we also look at what the other options are, and that's built into the curriculum and our course delivery. It's not just something we tag on, it's actually part of our delivery in the second year to make sure that people can make the best choices for their future.
Can I just add to that as well? Just because we've had in the games world, just to be a bit selfish for a minute, 2 students who've gone to set up what are now successful studios in their own right. One of them did go to university and one of them didn't, and they both resulted in having their own business making the same thing. I think sometimes the drive you've got doesn't matter too much whether you've been to HE. What you need is practice and experience and portfolio and trying things out, and how you choose to get that is up to you. Kate's right, the industry is, the majority of the graduates are still focusing on graduates, but the message is to people, prove them wrong, go and be great, go and make a portfolio that you can send to an interview. Most jobs now don't specify graduates. Some of the biggest employers in games in the UK are opening up their doors because what they need is talent and creativity and people who understand the platform that they're designing for, and this next generation understand it absolutely better than anybody else. So I'm a big fan of university, and I think when I teach at university, I teach some really exciting stuff, but I've also seen equally exciting stuff come from people who have made the choice not to go to university and do it in a different way. And both those cases that I'm talking about, they've made it. They've made it. And that's the most important thing in all this.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. Just one more thing about the how many UCAS points is the course worth?
Oh, that's a good one.
Well, the UCAS points, we work on the UAL qualification framework, which is really quite simple to understand in terms of there's a pass, there's a merit and a distinction. Essentially, if you're familiar with BTECs or A-levels, it all works out as roughly comparable. So a pass to us is 64 UCAS. And then going right up to a distinction, which is nearly 130 UCAS points. We have something that is a bit different in the creative world, though, is a lot of the interviews will be based as much on the portfolio as it will be on UCAS points. And you'll notice a lot of courses have got what looks like quite low UCAS points, but will insist on a portfolio as well. And in that work Katie was discussing, we spend a lot of time understanding what that means and then getting ready for it. And that might mean a very traditional A3 binder under your arm. It might mean making a website. It might mean putting social media together. But that is more and more important in the world, whether it is jobs or in HE, is to have a bank of work, a bank of experience that shows I can do this, ready to go. So you can access any university course with a distinction grade as you can if you get great grades at A level or you get a great grade at BTEC.
That's fab, thank you. Just another one, somebody said, how will I be taught on this course? Will I be in the classroom or will I be online? Okay, so we're going to be mixing it up next year. We're going to mix it up because obviously there are certain restrictions on the go. However, I've always taught in a very mixed up kind of way, and if I had a few of my old students on now, they'd explain exactly what that means probably better than I do. The time we have together is our time to discuss, for me to show you things to support students, but actually I'm always and always have made resources or projects that a student works on in their own time anyway. I tend to find that somebody who is quite new to it is taught and I teach them, or I show them, or I instruct and demonstrate and they copy, or I sit with them. And whether you're online or physical, that doesn't change too much. It's about listening and answering questions and making those mistakes that I keep saying is so important. As you progress, as you become more comfortable and more skilled though, you do become more independent. And I think the second years that I've just finished with this year that are going on to university or jobs afterwards, I work with them and I work alongside them rather than being stood there at the front talking to them all the time. And when we worked on some group projects, we're working with a games company, we're developing assets for them. I was sat with them making the same assets like a team. And for me, that is just as important. The online delivery is going to be unusual for some because some people aren't used to it, but it's something I've done a lot myself. I do a lot of my own development professionally as well. Things are constantly changing. It's important that I'm able to sit at my computer, headset on, listening, learning, going through it. What is most striking is if you really want to learn something, you want to do it no matter what anyway, so it doesn't matter too much. And also I'm really open about feedback. If there's something that you are not comfortable with or you're struggling with or you prefer it in a different way, then we talk to our students an incredible amount, and some students say, look, leave me alone, I'm happy with this, leave me to it, and some people want you to sit with them, and I think it's important at this stage that you get that as well and you get your chance to have input into your education and how best you work in an offline world or an online world.
Can I just add to that as well? Even when we had our full lessons face to face, we as a department in creative media, we use a lot of what we would call alternative assessment. So, for example, a lot of students worry that they might have to do a lot of writing. They might have to write very long reports or essays and things. And there is some of that. There's a couple of units where you do have to write an extended piece of writing, but we encourage students to play to their strengths as much as possible. So if you are better able to explain your ideas by talking about it, by doing a voice recording, by doing a screencast, we would never say you had to do something in a specific way. The way our students present the majority of their work for assessment is through making a website, building a website. And so because you've got a website, you can put anything on it. You can put images on it, you can put charts and diagrams, you can put videos, you can put voice recordings. The website is just a platform for you to share all of that work. So that translates quite nicely when we're working virtually, because the student can share a link to a website with us, they can upload a voice recording, they can upload an image, and that sharing of digital assets and digital things happens you know, fairly smoothly online, depending on your internet connection, as it does in the classroom, getting something up on a screen and discussing it face to face. So the fact that we are already flexible in our learning has meant that transporting our courses into a semi-online delivery has been pretty straightforward. So yeah.
That's fab, thank you. Somebody has asked, is there any exams for graphic design?
I'll take that.
Okay.
Well, our course is the main curriculum that you are on doesn't have exams. The method we work is much more kind of vocational, studio based, practical based. Some people say coursework, but I think that comes from people who are used to doing loads of exams with a piece of coursework. All of our stuff is handed in to us, like Katie says, through some sort of digital means. That normally is a website, and we don't do exams. What we do is we run our course in a way where we spend the majority of the year working with you, giving you these challenges, giving you these units, and then we get at the end what's called, people call it the final major project. And this is going to be, well, for you, it'll be either a 10, 12, 14-week project where you get to show off the very best of what it is that you do. So it's not sit in a room, do an exam, answer this. We work on these long projects, but we build up and build up and build up to this really brilliant thing that you do at the end of the course to show off. There are courses in graphic design that do exams. It is possible to do it that way, but we are very focused on jobs, on employment, on the skills, and the way we deliver this is the very best way of getting those skills up, and you know, your knowledge and your understanding will come out through your work in lots of ways that don't involve an exam at any point. If you're going to be resitting maths or English GCSEs, there will be some form of exam in that, but within the media courses, games, animation, content creation, etc., we actively don't do exams.
Brilliant, thank you. Somebody else has asked about GCSEs actually. So they say, what do I do if I don't get the right GCSE grades to get onto the course?
I'll answer that one if you want. At our level 3 courses, the specialisms we've discussed today, we ask for 4 GCSEs grades 4 to 9. In new money, including English. So if you don't have your English GCSE, you wouldn't be able to do the level 3 courses we've just discussed. If you didn't have just your maths, you are able to do level 3 and resit your maths alongside that. If you don't have that package of GCSEs, you still get to come and study media with us. What would happen is you would do a level 2 or a level 1 course whilst you resat your English GCSE. So, for example, you might come and do a level 2 course for a year, resit your English GCSE, and then you would then get to move on to your specialism in games or graphics or animation. If you do the level 2 course, you do a little bit of a wider range of subjects. So rather than just doing games or just doing animation, you would get to try a few different things at a slightly sort of more stretched out pace as well, which allows you to focus on resitting your English whilst also learning your media skills. And some of my best learners at level 3 have gone through the level 2 process. Some of the students that come from level 2 often walk away with distinctions at level 3 because they've had a little bit longer to find their feet, learn their skills whilst resitting their English, and they come to us, you know, sort of really ready to walk through the door and do level 3, which is always really nice to see.
Brilliant, thank you. Somebody's asked, will there be group projects?
Yeah, there will be group projects. Some of the projects we design them to work on your communication skills, and some of them will be because we've got a client or a company in and they expect that. Sometimes people choose to work in groups, and actually I quite like that when 2 people come together to say, right, Ben, you're giving us this project, can we work together on this? Games is an incredibly collaborative industry. You really can't do everything brilliantly, so we tend to bring people together. So I will also, and something that has become really sort of centre of the games course is how we work together in an online world and how we communicate together. You know, we're very good at sharing things and streaming things and communicating. I've got students who've used Facebook Messenger really, really brilliantly. We use Hack and Plan, or we use Trello and work collaboratively. And for me, there's this perception that working together means you're sat together physically next to each other around a computer, and actually there's far more to it than that. The good thing about a group project though is it teaches you something that it's difficult to teach you unless you do it in a group project. That is the way you are with people, the way you manage people, the way you react when somebody does something you don't agree with is really important, having your confidence. But that is something we have to teach, and we have to bring and develop as much as we don't expect you to be able to do it. Similarly, there's some people who really struggle in that situation and have quite, quite severe reactions to the idea of group projects. And once they go through a group project with us, they actually learn it isn't that scary, because we don't ask them to do the things that they've maybe had a bad experience with in the past. One of my most successful students who did not just the level 2 course, but came from a lower level than that, came up through level 3, was not good in sort of social situations, not good in that environment, but has spent a lot of their education getting better and better and better. And actually they're working with the company now, and he's so good, they're happy for him to work from home and just dip in remotely 1 day a week, almost picking how he works. What I really want to get home though is some people see it as negatives and anxieties as problems, but actually personality is a massive strength in our world. So if there's something you're actually a little bit scared of or unsure of, think a bit about what it means about you as a person and what that means for you and how you would like to be, and let's see if we can develop that into a positive rather than seeing these things as a negative.
Thank you, Ben. That's brilliant. Just a couple more questions now. So we've got somebody said, how many hours a week do I need to practice to get this good?
There's an old adage of, is it 10,000 hours makes someone an expert? So start the clock now, and the sooner you start, the more hours you get in. I've been in and around this worldish for maybe 16 years now, but not really. Didn't start out doing what I'm doing now, and I would never say I'm good. You can't have that attitude. I've got some things I enjoy most and I do better at, but the challenge is new things coming on. And if you look at something like modern virtual reality, when I was at university, that wasn't even an option to us right now. And some of the stuff that I've been delivering is stuff that's brand new in the last few years. So you've got to enjoy learning new things and new challenges. The course is set up to give you independent time to allow you to develop yourself, your skill set, how you want it to be. So the 12, 13 hours you do in college are the sort of starting point. And like Katie says, we really want another 12, 13 hours. I have game students who devote nearly everything they've got to this. We spend so much time on our phones, on our tablets, on the internet, that if we can take some of that and use the same equipment, the same time, the same resources to learning something, to designing something, to creating something, people learn really quickly. That's a much healthier way of living your life anyway. But then there are people who don't need to spend hours and hours and hours, and they've got a lot of natural talent. And some people who are really strong artists don't need to sit and do 50 hours to get better. And we don't insist that. We try and find different ways for them to learn. But it's very unique to the individual level.
Thank you. So we've just got 2 more questions actually. One of them's just come in and said, how long are the classes roughly? It means sort of lesson time, I think.
Shall I answer that one?
Go on, Kate.
Our teaching days are normally broken into sort of a morning and an afternoon session with a break in the middle of each. So the morning session normally runs for about 3 hours, so an hour and a half, a break, and then another hour and a half. And then if you're in for a full day, you might do the same again in the afternoon. You might just come in for morning and then go home. So it really depends on the timetable that you're on. So our sessions tend to run for about 3 hours just because we can break that up into smaller chunks if we need to. But if you are doing something fairly skills based, you will need to sit and do something for a period of time to get your head around it, to get your head around the menus. The lesson might start with us showing something and then giving you time to try it out. You don't learn software by sitting watching someone else do it. You need to get your teeth into it. You don't learn how to create ideas and go through an ideas generation process by listening to someone else. You need time to do it yourself. So that's kind of roughly, depending on your timetable, how our days are sort of structured. About 3 hours broken down into smaller chunks.
Okay, thank you, Katie. So we've just got one more question here, which is about work experience options. It says, what are the work experience options with COVID-19?
It's an interesting one.
I think we both need to answer this because it does vary depending on the project. The first thing to say is we're not stopping, and we're not just going to use it as an excuse not to do any of this. We still really want as much contact experience as possible. It is going to be within a slightly different scenario, but everything that we're hearing already is really, really positive. The last year, my students spent 3 weeks working with a company developing these 3D models and assets that actually went into game and into trailer. we were planning to do that remotely anyway, before we had any sort of idea of lockdown and using Microsoft Teams and Zoom and all these things. They actively encourage that. They want people to be independent and to work remotely, and we were setting up a system using online tools to share information and to use streaming and to use video meetings. So we're okay from that point of view. Nothing's really going to change. A lot of the industry does work on a freelance basis as well, which is people working from home. So actually, of all the industries that are being challenged by what's going on, I think we've got a really strong head start. Places will find ways of allowing people into work and to have their work experience, but already so far I've heard nothing but good signs that everything's going to be fine to still give you that experience. And actually, one thing we've done in the last few years is set up a mentoring program, and the mentoring program would be every Wednesday we get half a dozen students with half a dozen mentors from industries into a room, and they sit and have a coffee and eat biscuits and talk about what they do. Well, in an online world, we're not limited to that, and actually, because there's no traveling around involved, there's no cost, we're not going to have 6 mentors next year. We're going to potentially quadruple that at any one time. So there's already signs of us being really clever and not seeing this as a problem, and actually getting more from it and getting more about it. One from there might be I'm not driving to work anymore, which means I get to use my time for other things, which is learning more, developing more, designing more. Katie, have you got some examples you can add into that?
Yeah, I mean, I've been part of our mentoring process. We work with Ideas Foundation, so they provide some of our group libraries that Ben mentioned previously, where a company will come in and set a project and students will work on it in teams, and they also help arrange our mentoring scheme. So our students get matched with a mentor, and as Ben said, that used to be face-to-face, and then when the college shut and COVID happened, we had to move that online, and it's freed us up in some ways. Obviously, face-to-face is lovely and it's really nice to see someone in real life and be in the same room as them, but it means you're not kind of quite so held to when there's a free room and when everyone's able to travel to the same place at the same time. We can screen share. I've seen students show their work to their mentor, the mentor's given them feedback. It's all been done remotely and it's worked really nicely. And it also means we can open it up to mentors who aren't based in the Manchester area as well. We've already started looking at recruiting people internationally, people who are in different countries or different parts of the UK could remote in and work with our students rather than it having to be people physically in the city of Manchester. So where it does take away some elements of the work experience and the industry engagement, it also adds an extra layer in a lot of ways. And a lot of creative companies have had to work remotely because of the COVID situation. They've had to sort of move their teams into online working, and the advantages of the world we work in, animation and games design, is as long as you've got somewhere to store your assets, store your work, you can work with teams in different countries. The games industry is international. You get producers working with a development studio in Finland based in the UK and things like that. So if you are a student walking into the digital world, you're going to need to learn how to work remotely, because that's what industry does do, whether there's COVID or not. So having the opportunity to find your feet in that in college, because we've kind of almost been forced into this situation, is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just adding an extra string to your bow and an extra skill to your working practices and your employability.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Well, that's all the questions done now. So thank you so much for your presentation this afternoon. It's been absolutely brilliant. And just wanted to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon. Over the next couple of weeks, we've got lots of different events taking place. If you haven't enrolled and you want to enroll, then you can join one of our sessions next week. And also there's some student experience and sessions which are taking place as well. So thank you to Ben, thank you to Katie, and we hope you have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Bye.